Okay, and do you want to start the meeting now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, it's recording, and I think Blessing is all set, so
We are live.
we are live, so
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to welcome everybody to the September 15th meeting of the Milford Planning and Zoning Commission's Plan of Conservation and Development Subcommittee. So it's been a while since we met. The last time we met, we felt that because it's been so long, we didn't really have enough of information or direction on our own, having whatever spent, whatever year or so in preparation. We had a hiatus with other things happening and allowing our consultant to take the work that we started and start putting it together for us to review. We're back at that point. Main impetus of this meeting is to just reacquaint ourselves with the tasks in front of us, as well as putting a project plan together, sort of an ends policy. We'll pick a date where we want to get everything out to the public, and we'll back that off to today and put a plan together on how to get there. So if there's questions from the board members first, we would hear that. Then if I would have David just give us his brief overview, and then Adam, thank you so much for being here, and then let Adam take us through the work that has been done on our behalf.
and before we start that, since Meg is not here, I'll take a roll call, just for the
Okay.
record. So Mr. Mortimer,
Present.
Mr. Castagnoli. Well, I see him, so we'll say here, and Mr. Cater,
Present.
Mr. Quish.
I am here
Okay, and I'm Dave Sulkus. Okay,
and here.
and here.
Anything that any of the commission members or committee members want to open up with, or do we just want to get a quick overview from David and then hand it off to Adam to give us an overview of what work's been done for us so far?
Well, I don't know. I was going over what was sent out, and I'm not sure where the work has been concentrated at. So maybe if we start there, it might
Okay.
be good.
Okay, so what we've been doing is I've broken the current plan up into basically 4 sections. And I'm going through the sections, I'm making changes to the language based on the deliberations of the board and updating information where I can, and then passing off those sections to Adam, who is then reformatting the plan, looking at the edits I made and edits that I didn't make, but there's language that was there, and suggesting changes. And he'll also be where we need some technical assistance in updating certain aspects of it. They're doing that. He's been working with our GIS coordinator, John Hangen, on updating the maps, some of which were originally created by us, but the data wasn't with us. The data comes from other sources. So he's working with John on securing that information. I think what was sent to you tonight was the first part that I sent, and with having distributed that to you, I think it's important just to get a sense of, do you like how it looks? I mean, I think it looks pretty good, but your feedback on where we're going with it would be helpful. Because again, what we're doing is we're updating a document that everyone agreed was really, in good shape. It wasn't particularly out of date, but had elements that need to be updated, elements that needed to be strengthened. And that's what Adam and his team is doing. He can talk more about that.
So briefly, I know that John, we had done a bunch of work before you became a member of the committee, before you were elected, and Joe, you also came later. We had a committee started maybe 3 years ago, and we started with fairly complex Excel spreadsheets and tasks, and did a bunch of work. And not that we really ever brought anything to the finish line, but we did have debate and discussion on a lot of issues. And I do think that even though time is running somewhat short, in addition to the tasks that David identified as what we're asked to do, is I think there still is some room for visioning and so from creative input. As we look at section by section, if this committee feels that there is ideas that we have that we want to underpin. I mean, obviously this is not regulation subcommittee. It's the POCD is more of a like a roadmap, but it's not an itinerary, right? So this is what we're trying to promote for the city, and give it direction. It doesn't have a ton of teeth, and we talked a lot about trying to make it have more teeth, and so we can have that as well. But I think that it's not too late to have and I value that your folks' time and your consideration on this. And so if there is creative input, this is kind of like last chance, but we can make time for it. There is a fair amount of time, and if we are willing to, however deep our interest goes on a particular subject, we can schedule meetings around that. If we feel there's something that we're lacking in terms of vision and we want to dig deeper into it, we can have a couple more meetings and spend some more time on it. So that being said, I don't want you to think that because we have a draft in front of us that we're just here to rubber stamp.
Right.
Right. We do start with a good document, and some of it's outdated, and we could have probably just updated it and called it a day, but we didn't. And we had board members put in an awful lot of time and effort, which FHI acknowledged in their response. And it was one of the reasons why we chose them, because they did dive into what we had already said in our meeting minutes, and that was valuable for us, because it was time and thoughtful, and I think there were some ideas that were good, and I think that if we point the bow in the right direction, we can help direct the city in a way that is beneficial for the city. So we're not done with the creative stuff. So as we go through this with Adam, realize that this is a blueprint, and there's space in there for your individual creative effort. And with that, Adam, take it away.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, I think David has sort of covered the overall approach to tackling this that we've talked about, which is, he's kind of going in and layering in the feedback that you all have provided, sort of leading up into this. And then I am working with him. I'm reading through everything and identifying, opportunities, whether it be from a sort of organizational framework, or potentially opportunities to sort of further elaborate a little bit or bring some clarity to what you're trying to say in the document, working on that. The other thing that we've sort of been doing, as David mentioned, is, and you can see, is we've put together a template, basically a draft for the layout of the document, which if you all like and you think works well, we'll continue to use for the rest of the sections. We're hoping that this, helps you all sort of see a little bit more clearly what you have done and all the work that you've done. And then, if there are pieces that are missing, we can sort of delve into those in more detail, or things that need revisions. One of the big things that we've sort of done is try to standardize all of your maps. One of the things that we sort of identified in the last POCD is the maps were on a I believe like on 11 by 17 page, but the rest of everything else was on an 8.5 by 11 page. One of the things that we were able to do was basically keep the map the same size. So your map's not getting any smaller. It's just fitting on a smaller page. That's going to make the POCD a lot more accessible to people. Not a lot of people can print 11 by 17s at home. You can print these now, all on the same page at home. That just is sort of good standard practice for these documents. But we've also tried to clean up some of the graphics of your maps to make them easier to read, easier to understand where things are, easier to find things, bring a little bit more standardization to sort of the colors that are used and align them a little bit more across the entire document. As David and I have sort of talked about with this, he has sort of split this up into 4 parts, and you're seeing part 1 of this. As we continue to go through this, there are going to be other sections where, David is going to direct FHI to, update certain sections to bring our sort of expertise in where otherwise, he might be able to do it, but, time is sort of putting a little bit more pressure on us to get things done, or where, we have particular expertise that we can bring into the situation that, because we just have a larger staff, we can talk to those issues. So, that's sort of the direction that we're going to go with all of this. I think the approach of kind of going part by part is also useful. As Jim, as you've sort of mentioned, we can dive into the individual chapters, and if you all have thoughts or comments, we can, take those into consideration and update the draft, and then, bring that back to you for review and comment if need be.
So thank you, Adam. In your experience, so we have a target, we actually have an edict for December. Is that accurate, David and Adam? We're supposed to have this done and through public hearings and everything by December, but because of the COVID pandemic, that has been relaxed. Is there a drop dead date where we have to have a document that we're ready to go to the public with?
There's no drop dead date. We're one of the diligent communities where every 10 years, well, starting two cycles ago, we updated our plans every 10 years. There are communities who still haven't updated their plans from 20 years ago, 30 years ago. But having said that,
so they just file the same plan.
Oh no, they just don't do it until
they just ignore the state law.
Yeah, they may be smaller towns where they really don't get a lot of state funding for anything, because that's the stick that the state has is, if you're looking for discretionary funding from them, a grant or something along those lines, one of the things they want is to make sure your plan of conservation development is done and is updated. If you're not looking for those kinds of funds, there's really no downside to not doing it. But I think most municipalities do try to do it to some degree. We're diligent about doing it. But having said that, I was chatting with Adam, and we're a little behind, but I think, and Adam can speak for Adam, but I think that it's reasonable that we could get by December a completed draft. So that what that means is all 4 parts that I'm sending and working with Adam on have a draft document. That's not to say that it won't change after that. Of course, it's going to change after that, but you'll have the draft document that you can then go, okay, is it are there things you want to change? Do you want to go to public hearing at that point with it? Because that would be, probably that would be the next step.
So let's just review this for the current members. We have we come up with whatever it is, whether we call it a draft or whether we call it a proposed revised POCD. we go to public hearing. What typically is that? Does that look like? Is it one session? Is it a couple of sessions over a couple of months? Or and Adam, weigh in just ad hoc whenever you feel like it, if you have some insight.
Yeah. I could tell you that I think the last time we did the plan, we had a couple of public sessions. You know, when you're creating a plan from scratch, that's a different story. You can have workshops and charrettes. You can have many public hearings creating something from scratch. But since the last plan was an update similar to this one, we had just a couple of public hearings where we gathered input. We had one particular public hearing downtown just on the proposed changes in the planning for Wilcox Park in the city land down there, because that was a sort of a hot button topic back then. And you know, the plan, the draft changed based on the public comments at that point in time. And then we had, you know, I think one public hearing after that. And then what happens is, just for those who haven't been through this, you know, the planning board has its public hearing or public hearings. It's up to you. Then once you approve of the document, we then have to send it to the Board of Aldermen, and they have to approve it. And Adam, remind me, do we send it to the state before the Board of Aldermen, or do we send it to the state after the Board of Aldermen? I don't remember. I'll have to look.
I believe it's before. I think they have time to comment
On it.
go through the adoption process. The thing to be clear here is there's sort of two things. There is the sort of formal adoption process, which is sort of spelled out by the state, where you do have public hearings. But in advance of that, you can have, you know, public meetings, and those can be you know, formal meetings, you know, formal hearings where you have, you know, something like this where you have roll call, and, you know, you're sort of following the rules and regs of those meetings. But you can also have, you know, an open house or public meeting, and, you know, within those you can, you know, talk generally about the document, or as David said, you know, sometimes there are sort of some key topics or issues that you want to focus on, and you kind of highlight those out. Frequently for the public, this is a pretty big document for, you know, somebody to sit down with. And, you know, as much as I love planning, a lot of people will use these documents to go to sleep at night, right? They're not typically something that you can sit down and read all the way through. So often, you know, we'll put together sort of a presentation that will go over the major recommendations, the changes that have been made since the last document. And then people will, you know, be given an opportunity to either, you know, make public comments in a session like this, or submit comments via, you know, email, or, you know, before the internet was, you could, you know, you go into the office and drop in your comments into like a Dropbox.
Okay, great, thank you. And in your experience, you know, a 50,000 resident town in a similar demographic, is it common to have a series of public comment sessions before we get to the formal public hearing at the end, when we actually have a document that we're close with?
Yeah, I typically recommend that you have at least one meeting in advance of the adoption process for people to become, because once you start getting into the sort of adoption process, there's the momentum starts moving, and people kind of want a feeling of like, oh, we're here to adopt this, right? There might be some questions, there might be some changes. Frequently, we'll have a meeting where somebody will say, you know, we're very happy adopting this if X, Y, and Z is changed. You know, there are 3 small changes. But you want to give people an opportunity, generally speaking, to feel like they can make suggestions and provide, you know, identify changes to the document before that sort of train leaves the station. So it would
Right,
be.
okay.
I will say that, talking with David and sort of reviewing what's there to date, a big part of this is also the question to be the extent to which the recommendations in the plan or the changes in the plan are particularly suggesting substantial changes to the municipality itself. And you all are not, in a lot of ways talking about, wholesale changes to zoning. That would be something that would elicit a lot of public interest and a lot of public feedback. Typically, in a sort of process like what we're looking at right now, what you're going to get are people who sometimes it's called like adding an ornament to the tree. These plans that can be the way to kind of think about these trees. And somebody says, hey, we're going to be going after a grant in a year or two. We want to make sure that the plan of conservation and development includes some language that would be supportive of the grant application that we're going to be doing going forward. So it's an opportunity for those entities to sort of make sure that they
little pre-planning, lay a foundation for an argument later. So what I'd like to do now, Adam, if we could, is go over the draft we have on this one. I think that and please, any member jump in anytime they want, but if we can just review what we have, and at that point I think that we should probably have two levels of discussion. One, if any member feels that we want to do a deeper dive on anything, or we have instant reflexes or inspiration, that we can note that. And then I think at the end of the day, we would say, I mean, I could see that if there is substantive issues, and with the draft, our input, and then we can say, well, we can have another meeting on this item number 1 of 4 and invite the public. And then, so I could envision 4, maybe don't need them, but I can envision maybe 4 sort of Zoom public sessions. We had one for regulations subcommittee. It was relatively painless. People were polite and didn't take a ton of time and gave some good ideas. So I think it makes the public feel part of government and planning. And anyway, so if you guys would like to just go ahead and do a review of the draft we have for phase 1 of 4.
Yep, I can do that. And the other thing that I will just add here is I think, now that you all have sort of an initial view of this, a draft of this, there is also an opportunity, for you to take a moment to sit with this and to, send comments and things like that to David as we kind of go. That can be also an effective way of sort of working through this.
Yeah.
So, yep. Can you all see that?
We get this probably
Yes.
a week, like the draft of the next phase. We should get it a week before. I mean, again, other people have different time schedules, but at any rate, I did not actually have a chance to look at this yet. So I'm happy to hear your analysis, Adam.
Yeah, and we are open to doing something like that for the next round, is sort of getting it at least a week in advance to you all, so you have time to review and provide it. So, there's a cover. There's going to be, a lot of this is going to be updated, the contents, as we continue to fill out the document. All the figures and maps are going to be updated as we go through. So the document starts with an introduction. It outlines sort of the sort of statutory requirements of the plan of conservation and development. And I'll just say, David, jump in here or stop me if there's anything you want to highlight as we go through this. But one of the things that I liked about the last document that you all did, and I want to continue here, is just the summary of changes in this update. That'll help people kind of understand the big, changes. And again, with this idea that people aren't typically going to sit and read through the entire document, this kind of helps them find and highlight the things that are, maybe of importance to them. So the document starts off with a discussion of land use. It's got the land use map there, which we're almost on there. A couple of, you can see here, There are a couple of like blank spots here, and those are just missing data points that we just need to fill in, and it's a GIS issue that we've got, but something that we'll be easily updating. The conversation starts just sort of talking about the location and distribution of different land uses. There's a table here that talks about sort of all the different land uses and how many parcels there are, how many acres, the percentage of land that's there. It's really a sort of an accounting of where you are in your land use. And then there's a conversation here about sort of trends and recommendations as it relates to land use. As I understand it in your conversations, you all are not anticipating making any changes to the zoning the zoning boundaries or the zoning districts coming out of this plan of conservation and development. There's some
Yeah,
change.
I think that if there was, like, at the end of the day, after we do this for the next few months, if we have a section that says major change recommendations or whatever, that we could add that. But again, the mechanism is either a member of the public recommends a zone change or a language change, or, as you know, as we can do, and we have a regulation subcommittee that's a standing committee at this point, and we can address things. So that it could be the case, though, that this document can codify a laundry list. You know, so and it would be, again, I know this is just setting targets, and whoever's got the bow and the arrow can shoot where they will in the future, but we could do that. But it wouldn't, I don't think it would impact page 1 to page 200. You know, it would be page 201 kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I do think, Jim, that, you know, if there are changes to zoning that you all are recommending, you know, they should be reflected in your plan of conservation and development. You don't have to go into the nitty-gritty details of regulatory changes, but if you're making, you know, suggesting adding or subtracting uses from a certain district, potentially changing, you know, in a big way, some of the bulk standards in a district, maybe height or minimum lot size, that's something that you do want to account for in your plan of conservation and development. That's worthwhile including.
Yeah, well, I mean, once we get to housing in general, we have something in front of us now with having opted out of the state ADU legislation, and the current regulation subcommittee is looking at changing our language now and changing it. I mean, that could happen before this gets published anyway. But I see what you're saying. And it could be, I don't know if we would do it as an addendum or if we would do it per section, but we can think about that as we go.
It's something to think about. I mean, the way to understand this is that, you know, your zoning or your plan of conservation and development should support your zoning ordinance, right? So when things come in front of, you know, your zoning hearing board and they start debating, like, is this, you know, reflective of the goals of the community? They're going to be looking at your POCD. And so having those kinds of things in the POCD and saying, yes, you know, we are supportive of these changes is an important part of kind of backing up as it would be your zoning ordinance. So certainly something to think about there.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And for me personally, and I imagine other members of the board as well, to underpin sustainability, renewable energy, distributed generation, you know, conservation, land use. You know, these are things that are obviously, you know, what people call under the big umbrella of climate change. You can pick and choose, you know, how you want to define it, but those are important, and we'll probably lean a little bit on staff and you to help us make sure that we are underpinning that as we go along.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Adam and I actually discussed that yesterday, or the day before yesterday. Yeah.
Just as an aside, I loved it. I've been thinking about this for a year now, something I read about somewhere in Northern Europe, Scandinavia, somewhere, they planted fruit trees. Kind of, I guess they don't bear fruit that often, and they're pretty cold up there, but just on whatever public land you have, and anyone can go and take what you want. I did bring it up to the, I think the tree commission one time, and they said, well, sometimes the fruit just falls on the ground and someone's got to go clean it up,
Yeah.
So when you plan these things, make sure you realize it could just be a mess. But anyway, I mean, that's one idea. And there is, I think at one point in the next few months as we go along, I know that I'll personally try to put a little bit more effort into, kind of what is on the cutting edge of city planning and land use and where we are, which kind of has whatever restrictions it has, but we can grow peaches and we can grow apples and we can grow grapes, so we do have, and we do own a ton of land up at Eisenhower Park, and we have a lot of public land that could be.
That's true. That's a great idea about the trees. I like that. That's not
So I think that's a great opportunity where, as we go through this, we can just talk about sort of, goals of the plan of conservation development. And one of them could be just, supporting sustainable and, economic use of, sustainable use of land, and encouraging innovative approaches to use of public spaces, right, or public lands, right? That's things that we can start to layer into the POCD. So in this next section, open space and recreation, again, there's sort of a conversation here about the existing conditions. There's these two maps, which is a classification of open space. We're still getting some of the data for that. And then natural diversity database layers. And then some of the active recreation areas, and they'll be sort of identified where those are. It's my understanding, and David, correct me if I'm wrong, there are no current plans right now to acquire new active recreation facilities. Is that accurate?
That not to my knowledge.
Yeah. So,
I'm sorry to interrupt, David. Could you resend a link to Mr. Cater? He got kicked out and is having a hard time getting back in.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. I didn't see that he left, and I don't see him trying to get back in. Okay, no problem. We get that out to him right now.
So one of the things that sort of was done in this, which is one of the updates here, is that there were these sort of 9 designated green belts and green ways. These have been consolidated into 7. Each of them sort of starts with a description of the area, and then includes some recommendations for that area about sort of how best to approach the sort of conservation and preservation and protection of those areas.
Excuse me, did we lose 2 spaces, or are they consolidated physically, or what happened to those 2?
My understanding is that there's no loss of spaces, that they were just consolidated into 7 areas from 9. Is that
okay?
Your understanding?
Yeah.
So it's the same. It's the same geographical square footage, but just designated into 7.
Correct.
Now, Adam, when you do this, we're not 100% sure. I understand that a lot of what you're doing is creating a document that looks good, and you're doing, kind of like visual editing and stuff. Are you looking at content? If this is an existing content, do you like redline something and bring it to David's attention? and say, well, this is what you had, and this is what we think. Are you doing content consult at this juncture?
So what I'm doing, and the quick answer is yes. So what's sort of happening is David is doing the first pass of this because, obviously he's been part of all of your conversations and sort of been updating it. And then I am going through and sort of highlighting things that sort of jump out to me, for conversations with him. And sometimes it's, simple like, hey, I think it would be clearer if you wrote it this way, or, it makes more sense to me to present the information in one way or other. So sort of communication issues. But other things also are around, let's make sure that we delve into this in a little bit more detail. And the other thing to be of note is that not so much in this section, but in upcoming sections, David and I have talked about he may be identifying sections for us to update, where we say, hey, we can dig into this in a little bit more detail and provide the actual content for your all's review. David, is that sort of an
I think
accurate
that one thing
description?
I'd like to do is I'd like to give this committee a little bit of forenotice and, an opportunity. It could be the case that we look at things and say, yeah, you got it. Or it could be that the individuals or collectively we see opportunity. And so that going forward, like we'll look at this now and we'll probably, digest this a little bit here. I think it's important that, and it's hard for me to gauge, and I'm not disparaging any level of interest in. I don't even know if we actually created in the past a clear vision, right, of where we were trying to go. We dove into minutia, and then we had big ideas, and then we dove back into a bike lane issue or something, so I don't think we have given you all a kind of a 30,000-foot vision, dream vision of what Milford could be. And I think it's already almost there. I just think that we'll take a look at this as we go. And when the next section, one of 4, comes up, I think we should probably have a quick, a quick look for this committee to say, this is the section, this is coming up, here's some time, think up what what your concerns are and what your aspirations are. I mean, I think most of this is not correcting a wrong, but creating a better, right?
Yep.
So if we have a little more, it could be that we're just on the same page totally, and it could be that somebody has an idea or a vision. So we are where we are now. We'll take this document and we'll let you go through it again a little further, but I don't know if Jim Cater got back in.
He's here.
Got kicked off. He rebooted his computer. We're trying to get it back in, but
He's muted, but he's here.
okay, good.
So, and I think that is also something, Jim, what I'm hearing from you is a sort of as you're starting to see this, that sort of the document has a lot of kind of the middle ground stuff, the kind of meat and potatoes pieces of it. But maybe there's a need to articulate sort of like a bigger vision that sort of sits over top of it and kind of guides things. That can also be something that we can do, sort of looking, once you've reviewed through the entire document, you can say, okay, now that we've sort of read through it, what are the big salient ideas, right? What are the big salient sort of things that almost weave across all of the different sections? And we can start to think about that as a
Okay. Do you think that's better than trying to do it on section by section? Your instinct and your experience.
Yeah, I think you may end up in sort of, if putting the cart before the horse a little bit. Like if you read, we kind of read through the whole document, And then we have a meeting that sort of has a conversation about, okay, now that we've gotten through everything here and we've sort of read through all of the details of it, what are the salient points? What are the key things that sort of cut across? It sounds like, sort of sustainability is going to be a really important part of this, and resiliency. And in looking at the last POCD, that was clearly, part of it, maybe a little bit not as emphasized as might be here.
A different era, and different technology. So yeah.
Yeah, but we can sort of talk about that a little bit there. I think there is some advantage to kind of getting the document into a place where you can actually like read all the way through it, and that this group can kind of read through it and see it all together before you sort of go section by section on and trying to kind of come up with the pieces. Does that make sense?
Well, it does, except for the fact that it seems like our path here is section by section. We're at section 1 now, and we have 4. So we're going to look at them section by section. I don't know if we need to blue sky each one, or we just need to have a little forewarning and have a meeting. And again, some of these, I don't know. I'm looking for direction, and I'll open it up to the board, to any member at any point in time to jump in and help us guide us through this, because I have instincts, and this is my first go around at this. So not your first rodeo, Adam, and not your first rodeo, David. I do think that what I would emphasize is that as we are, kind of given the responsibility to stand up and say, this is what we did, right? So you have your company and your reputation, but but our names, and it's not even about our name, but whatever. This is our task too. So I want the members to feel not only a part of it and to have their thoughts and concerns considered, but ample time and information to be able to weigh in on it. And again, to go back to the beginning, it's a pretty good document as it is. I don't think we're rewriting it. So it's not that we're, tasked with changing the course of Milford, but I look at it as an opportunity. And we have very creative, very smart people on the committee. And I want that level of naivete with compassion for the community to blend with the expertise that you and David bring. That's all I'm hoping for.
Yeah, and from my perspective, as being a new member, and all this is new to me, I would love to be able to put out a vision of the city that we believe in, and just kind of put it out there. And this is what Milford should be like. You mentioned conservation; that's obviously part of it. We're a coastal town, and that's another emphasis in our history. But just to be able to do that, I don't know if we need to do it before, or after we have all 4 sections. I'm still trying to take it all in, but I think that from my perspective, that's what I'm excited about. We could kind of, it's an opportunity to say, this is our Milford and this is what we want it to be. So
yeah, David,
exactly.
David, I mean, one thing that we could do is, what we've been sort of getting into is kind of the nitty gritty of a lot of this document. And what I'm hearing from you all is that there is a need to sort of maybe take one step back and kind of, Jim, you sort of use the blue sky metaphor, but sort of really, John, you started talking about expressing a vision for, what Milford really could be. I mean, maybe what we do is in the next time we meet, we set the document aside a little bit. David and I can still go through, we can still chug away at the process of updating, some of the data, making sure everything looks right. We're sort of bringing the piece in there. But maybe we sit down and I could facilitate a conversation with all of you to try to develop that vision a little bit of what are the kind of key core elements that we're at. And that we can insert into the document and then use also to kind of guide the conversations around the updates to the document itself. How do you all feel about something like that?
Yeah,
I like the sound of that.
yeah, I personally like that. I know that our experience, and again, it was not even with these same members, but it was very thoughtful and caring members, had a whole bunch of ideas. And what we did is we got really specific about a lot of things. And
Yeah.
at one point, it didn't really get to what we, it was great. And a lot of that's in what you've probably already read or heard, or is available to review for all of us to do that. And David, that's a cool thing to maybe consider, is if we could get the current members minutes of the last 2 years or whatever it was of minutes, so they could just sort of see what Peg thought, because she was passionate about a lot of stuff. And whether you have time to read it or not, I don't know, but we have the minutes anyway. But I do think that, and especially since we don't really have an in stone date to finish, we have a budget to consider, so we have to use Adam's time judiciously. But I think that right now I'm seeing more of a document curator as opposed to a vision, somebody assisting the vision. And I think that for this new board, or to get on board, is to do some visioning. And I appreciate your recommendation, Adam, and I'd like to do that. And I think that as curator of the document, I think that you and David and that information and the maps, that's all very important and stuff we're not going to be able to do. The only thing we can actually weigh in on, outside of I like a font, or whatever, but is a little bit of visioning. And this particular cohort has not had that opportunity. This was a couple of years ago, and I think that that's important. And then at that point, when this collective board feels it's important to bring some input from the community, I think it's essential. I was very impressed with last night's meeting with the people from the community. They were very appreciative. And so
why don't I, Jim, why don't I do that? Why don't I coordinate with David to kind of get some of, download from him some of the sort of past ideas that have been put out there. I can kind of work with him directly a little bit on this. And then David, you and I can kind of also game plan a strategy for sort of coming back and engaging the board and what it sounds like what is really needed is a sort of structured conversation that doesn't get too into the weeds about sort of all the nitty gritty details of it, but still has some teeth and some piece of it. And fortunately, that is one of the things that like FHI Studio does very well. We have a really robust community engagement and sort of visioning practice, and so I'd be happy to kind of work on that if David, if that makes sense.
I think that's great. I'm sure David feels pressure on the time, even though he says it's open-ended. But the process of I think it'd be two parallel paths that merge in the future, right? So there is this, what you guys already have going, and it's great. You're updating maps, you're getting language cleared up, you're getting things that are outdated out and things that are now relevant in, and it's essential, and it can continue exactly the way it is. Now what we can add is a layer of allowing this committee to be part of some visioning, whether we're only visioning stuff that's already in there, or there's something that we feel is essential or important and valuable to bring to bear on the document. But I don't think we stop, and say, oh no, we don't. We have to reinvent the wheel. No. This is going. This is moving. This is on a path all of its own. And at the end of the day, if there's a paragraph that's inserted, or if it's if it's a new section at the end of the document, or however,
Yep.
those who are smarter than me figure out how to integrate it into the document. But I think it's imperative that we have a parallel mechanism for this committee to contribute and to create that, whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4 public input sessions that definitely do not stop the progress of what's already happening, because all the stuff that is that you folks know, being experts in this field, have to get done, keep going. And then at the end of the day, if there's 20 paragraphs that fit in, or one addendum with 20 paragraphs tacked at the end, doesn't matter. But this, I like the way it looks. I like, what you're doing. And again, I haven't had time to read it yet. The only thing I would ask, if we'll probably sit on this session a little bit, section a little bit to review it. But I mean, there's no way I'm going to be an editor on this. I'm going to read it for, again, get me up to 15,000 feet or 30,000 feet, whatever.
Yep.
And
Okay.
that's it.
Yeah, I like that strategy. I like that strategy, and I can work with David to kind of address it. So I just want to make sure that we have some time to just kind of quickly review the end pieces. So
yes, please
there
do.
are some recommendations and implementation recommendations here for open space. And that is, something that we can explore and talk about in more depth. And then, there is this coastal resources and the Long Island Sound. There are one of the things that David has done, which I think has been a great addition here, is there have been some updates to the Coastal Management Act that require new things in your POCD that you weren't previously required to include. And so this is David, correct me if I'm wrong, this is a sort of entirely new section that you've added here to this.
It's not entirely new, but
Okay.
yeah, I would love to say that I created it, but no, I didn't. It's not entirely new, but I did give you some supporting new data for issues like coastal resiliency, because we had been involved in some studies for that over the last few years. And members of this committee may remember when we had the presentation from CERCLA came down with the scientists the state has for coastal issues and talk about the impacts of sea level rise and what that's going to mean for Milford. And I think there's some mapping in there that is actually kind of disturbing about with coastal sea level rises and the impact on our land mass in 50 years and 100 years. And I think that's really important stuff that we need to update in here, because it might not be this plan, but at some point the city is going to have to and the political will is going to have to the city is going to have to come together to go, look, this area of town is going to be underwater. I mean, it's underwater now once a month, sometimes twice a month. It depends, and it's only going to get worse when we're going to end up with parts of town that have standing water all the time. What are we going to do about that? Are we going to try to fight the sea level rise, or do you talk about relocation? We might not want to have policy.
Damn, that's terrible. Build a dam.
Well, yeah, I mean, there you go. But
1,000-foot sheet pile banged into the ground of Long Island Sound.
How's that going to affect your view, Jim?
Well, I'll tell you what. If I could raise the high tide by 11 feet in specific areas, I could create a water turbine that could create electricity for all of New England.
Yeah. I mean, so that I think, David, you're sort of hitting the point here that and I think this is going to be really critical. Is there are going to be some updates here, and the sort of section ends here on kind of talking about water quality and sort of sea level rise, and so we're going to want to layer that content in there. So I'm going to stop sharing now. I think what sort of makes sense on next steps for this is you now have this document. You all have a link to this. You can do one of two things. You can either just send like an email to David with your comments on it after reading it. Maybe you've got just some top level thoughts that you want to share. The other thing that you're more than welcome to do is to use the document and just comment or mark up the document directly. And identify anything that says, hey, I'm confused about what we're trying to say here, or, have we considered, X, Y, and Z in this part. And so this is sort of your opportunity to kind of dig into those pieces of it. If Jim, if you know work of sort of other committees that are working on things and saying, hey, let's make sure we talk to these people to get their input on what they'd like to see in the document.
Yeah. Now, what would be the mechanism if somebody wanted to redline the document? How would we do that? And do we create a Dropbox so that if Joe marks it up, I see it, and Jim sees it, and John sees it, and David sees it? How do we do that so that if we have a working document that, I'm a red line, Joe's a green line, is there something in your own home system that does that, or is there something that we use Dropbox or?
Yeah, if everybody is comfortable marking up a PDF, so let me pull this up really quickly. My PDF viewer is going to be a little bit different than yours. Let's see if I just, but I can show you here really quickly here. What I can do is I can share a new document that will allow all of you to see one another's comments in the document. But all the PDF viewers out there should have a basically a comments tool here. And what that does is it sort of brings up some of these options so that you can leave basically just like a sticky note in here that says like, hey, this map looks good, but we're missing, X. And you can just post that. And then what can also happen here is people can reply to this. I agree. We need to include X.
Yeah. I'm
So
not
that,
sure that we're all, but so between that and just sending David a text message or an email saying,
Yep.
hey, I think this on page 12 over here, and let him figure out how to be a PDF editor.
Yeah, exactly. And if
you. Yeah.
If word comments or emails are better to do that. The other thing is sometimes people like to go through and make sort of specific comments in there, but then after going through it, you're like, hey, I have a couple of big picture sort of thoughts about this that I want to say.
Or you put a comment in and it's addressed later that you didn't get to. Yeah.
So we can do that. David, if you're comfortable sort of receiving those comments, and I will Monday, I can share with you all a new link that will allow everybody to see one another's comments, and then you can comment on each other's comments and on those comments. But I don't think we're going to need to get too much into this as a kind of copy edit work, but more just big picture. What are there any issues or any questions that you all have with that? And then we can roll those into the next draft, and then we'll release sort of part 2 of this with the updates from part 1. And then, in the meantime, Jim, I think you articulated it very well, which is while we're kind of working on this more detailed approach, David and I can start to put together a sort of strategy for a meeting with you all to do more big picture visioning kind of work. And that can run in parallel to what we're doing with the document itself, if that makes sense.
Okay. I mean, I like that. I think that, again, I know I didn't have a chance to really look at this, so I don't know that anybody else did, but before we close up, I mean, if I'd love to hear from each person or not, and just find out what your thoughts are on where we are and what you feel is important on the way forward.
I can start.
Yeah.
I have one word, momentum. We're starting to gain some momentum now. And I just want to caution, and it's more an observation, we, as had been touched upon, we spent a lot of time in the past going over a lot of items, and in many cases, getting lost in the weeds and spinning around in circles, and all great discussions that happen multiple times on many subjects. And
A lot of heart and soul, though.
totally. And if we could translate that into something in the report, that's great. But it's just me. I don't want to repeat to the degree that process, that repetitiveness, pursuing an idea down a road that we're not going to come out of, and not get a document out. So
No, I fully agree.
Yeah.
And I think that there's actually no one except me that was part of that committee that did that deep of a dive on the minutia of a particular thing. And there was sort of it was all heartfelt, but it was a lot of the discussion was, well, we should change this. Well, yes, well then that's the regulations subcommittee, not this. So, but we did do the exercise, and there was a lot of good stuff, and
Right,
the minutes are good. So a lot
and
of
I'm not saying don't.
No, I know,
But
I think this is a new committee, and I do not want to truncate the vision of this committee. So I think the parallel path of getting what you guys do and making the document look good and structured properly and the maps right. And then as we're doing that item by item, we still have room to come up with some capacity to do what we're supposed to do is to think about what's best for Milford in the future. So
totally.
So I'm all down with that. And I would like, though, I think that probably because we're cost conscious, next meeting, probably Adam will do on our own. And we'll try to put a schedule together if we need to send you a draft and, ask for an informed opinion on.
Well, would it make sense? I mean, because we just discussed, if we're going down the road of the two paths, wouldn't it make sense to have Adam sort of there at the beginning of the road to set the framework? I mean, I'm just trying to think ahead for this next meeting based on the discussion.
Yeah, I just kind of want to have time to read the first.
Okay.
To the first thing, and everybody else have the time to read the first thing. We could definitely totally accept your thinking on that, but I think at one point we should regroup just as a committee and say, we've read this, and don't absorb time on Adam's point, and obviously we didn't get the budget we wanted, so we have to be cost conscious, but we can have a meeting with just us on this first quarter, and having read it and absorbed it, and if any comments are done, maybe whatever, I don't know. I haven't read it, so I don't know what it is. I haven't looked at it yet. So
why don't we do this? Why don't we get the comments from you all to, and David, before we make a decision on the next meeting, let's get your comments and see the extent to which we think from your comments there's a need to really get into a lot of the details of this. And then David, what I can do for you is I can also put together a sort of strategy for engaging this group in a visioning
Okay.
sort of exercise. And then, based on your all's needs on that, you can determine whether or not I come to the next meeting or don't.
Yeah. And Dave, if you would put together again an ends policy, it doesn't have to be December, even call it June, say June 1st of next year to have a final document.
Oh, God, no.
We're gonna get
Tell
this
us
done.
where we need to be at each month. You pick it out, but I want a schedule.
Yeah.
If I have to do the schedule, I'll do the schedule, but I'd like you to do the schedule, and so that we can hold our own feet to the fire.
Right.
We can't keep going. And if we want to insert public comment at different stages, we can do that. But I want to see a schedule. And I don't know, you consult with Adam on that. That's fine. But for the next meeting, I want to see a schedule to completion, and we can still, it's not in stone, but it's something that we can talk about. I want to see that, and I want to see it in a detail not super detailed, but a level of at least the 4. If you're visioning 4 components, I want 4 components in the schedule for initial discussion.
Yep.
You can figure that out. Yeah.
Initial discussion and whether or not you want public input, we can build that in.
Yeah, and if that kicks the schedule off a week, then it's not the end of the world. But I want us, the group, the committee, to have a vision in their head, so that if they need to allocate time and bandwidth to it at a certain week or month, that they know in advance.
So this will be helpful. So for everyone's planning purposes, I'm going to be going on vacation for a couple of weeks, starting Friday. So you'll have 2 weeks. I'm recommending that over those 2 weeks, look at section 1, and come up with your comments. Yeah.
And I think that now that we're back into it, I think the next 2 weeks we should look at the old. I mean, we've all looked at the old plan, but also do it again. So this is our foundation. Let's regrout the foundation.
Right.
Underpin it with.
Yeah, I want to keep the momentum moving forward.
Yeah, we need to do that. Yeah.
definitely.
And I would love it if anybody has any thoughts or comments that they would like to share, or things they want us to do, directions they want us to go in the committee before we call it a game.
Well, I would just say, I love the POCD, the look and everything. It's a pretty good document. I think we all feel that way. I love the double track idea, the parallel track. So we can keep going on another one, and it won't impact won't bog down the other nuts and bolts that David and Adam are working on. So,
Okay,
so I'm liking it.
Joseph.
We can't hear you.
Joseph, you must be muted.
It looks like he's not muted, but we still can't hear him. Okay, he's going to plug in something that.
Progress?
Yeah,
Now we can hear you. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Can
Okay.
you hear me now?
We got to get out of neutral, and I just want to get straight what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be going through section 1 and getting our comments to you. Is that correct, Dave?
That's my understanding.
Okay. I just want
And
to
if
make
you
sure.
can get them to David by, let's say, the 3rd, which is basically 2 weeks, and that'll give him time to go on vacation and enjoy. David, I was wondering if your background was a metaphor for being in the weeds. You get it? Maybe we start switching that. We put you in the blue sky country for the next one. But yes, Joseph, if you could kind of get comments to David, either in the PDF or as an email,
Okay.
by the 3rd, that would be great. And that's a
Okay.
Monday, everybody.
James,
Okay.
any thoughts or comments?
No, I agree with the approach right now. Looking at section 1, sending some comments off to David is the right approach. And I haven't looked at it yet either. I just got it as well. So
Yeah, me too. And I think that, you know what, we do have 2 weeks now, so to be honest with you, it's been a long time since I read the last one, 10 years ago. I remember thinking it was a good document, but I haven't read it again. So, I mean, I think that, you know what, we're here, we're doing it. What the heck? Let's just freaking do it. Let's go in, read the whole thing and study it a little bit. You know what I mean? Why not? It's not that big a document.
We got a
But-
couple
but
weeks
also-
to do this.
And we've all been engaged and thoughtful about 100 different things. Why not just freaking dive into it and see if you see gaps, then write them down. And then when we get to that section, remember that that's what you wanted to make better. This is our chance to make a difference. This is the whole better part of planning and zoning. Sitting there and talking about somebody raising their house because they get flooded. Yeah, we approve it. Fine. But this is the fun part of it. We get to dream. We get to try to do something good for the community. I think this is the best part of the whole job, I think.
Excuse me, Adam, you said 2 weeks, September 3rd, you meant October 3rd, right?
I meant October 3rd. We're not going back in time. No Marty McFly.
October the 3rd, just wanted to
October,
make sure.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else want to pontificate or just me?
You've done enough for all of us, Jim.
Well,
That's
a
their
hard
leader's
day.
job.
I've had a hard day. Anyway.
So you don't want any pushback. You
No,
just,
I
it
just
just goes one way to us and nobody pushes back like your
Yeah,
workday.
I just get loud. That's all. Anyway, I appreciate you all putting up with me, and but I do think it's pretty cool, and I hope that we can make a pathway to make look for better, and our vision is something that's valuable. Anyway, David, anything else to close?
I don't think so.
Adam, thank you very much for your effort and your
Very,
time.
very quickly, I think, let me just, do we have minutes from our last,
I think so. It was on the agenda.
yeah, we have minutes from the last agenda, last meeting that need to be.
Okay, do we have a motion to accept the minutes?
I move,
John moves, we have a second.
Second.
We have second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. No nos. It's unanimous. Unanimous. I know, I'm being a wise guy. Unanimous, thank you. Thanks, Adam.
All right, have a really good one.
Thank you, Blessing.
take care now.
Thank you. Have a good
Good
night.
night, good night, everybody.
all right, everybody, enjoy your vacation, David.
Oh, thank you. Talk to you soon.